Hello and welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast, Week in Mobile Games, where we discuss the week's news and provide some insights. I'm Craig Chapple, head of content at PocketGamer.biz. And on the podcast with me today are our deputy editor, Paige Cook, and our news editor, Aaron Astle. How you both doing? Paige, what you been up to?
Nothing too special. Obviously, it's October, so it's an excuse to try and watch some more horrors. There's like a thing on Now TV. It's like because I always struggle with picking films because you spend more time choosing than you do actually watching it. So they've got this thing where it's like 31 days of Halloween. You click it and it just gives you a horror film to watch. But it's a bit hit and miss, you know. There's some okay ones, some terrible ones. It did have The Birds on it, which I'll admit I didn't watch the whole thing through. I just went through it, but if you don't know what it is, it's a movie from the 60s. And everyone should just skim through it just to see how in the 60s this was genuinely something terrifying. And you watch it now, it should not be in horror, it should be in comedy because it's hilarious. So, yeah, that was fun. But I have been getting my horror fix from games. I've been playing the new Silent Hill 2 remake, which is very good.
It's been so long since I played Silent Hill. Is that PlayStation 1 game?
Yes.
That is a long, long time ago. Do they still hold up? Does the remakes? Are they
The
good?
remake does. There was a lot of like when it was in development, I think like nobody had faith in it and everybody thought it was going to be terrible, but it's actually genuinely really, really good. It looks great. The sound is really, really good. So yeah, would definitely recommend. It's quite nostalgic, even though obviously it looks nothing like the original because it's completely up to date.
I was saying just before this about horror movies. I was like, I'm not that big a fan of horror films, but then actually, if I think about it, I might be wrong about myself. I love the Alien franchise. I like a good B movie that's kind of horror.
Mm.
What's the film called? The Velocipasta. If anyone ever wants to watch that, it's not really horror. It's sort of horror, sort of ridiculous B movie film. It's brilliant. I've seen it. I've seen it twice. It's about a pasta that becomes a velociraptor.
That sounds amazing. There is one that's called Zombievers. Again, it's not a horror, it's more of a comedy, but it's what it sounds like. It's zombie beavers.
I've seen Zombievers. It's a legit good film. It's not even like a to me. It's not even just a good B movie. It's just a good film.
It's something, it's an experience.
Not quite as high praise.
I feel like I should be making notes here.
Yep.
I've not
Yeah.
seen any of these. The Velociraptor one sounds very compelling.
It's the lowest budget movie you'll ever watch, but it's good. But nobody quote me
I
on
feel
that.
like I've learned a lot about you from this.
Yeah, yeah. There's even really quickly. We're already getting on the games podcast. There's a scene at the beginning of that film where because it's so low budget. I mean, it's right at the start. I guess I won't give the spoiler, but something happens. Basically, it involves a car blowing up, but because they don't have a budget, the car it just comes up on screen. Explosion here. Anyway, sorry, a bit of a detour. Thanks for that page, Aaron. What have you been up to?
Yeah, so slightly less horror based. But, I had a uni friend come and visit last weekend, which was very nice. Over a year since I'd seen him, so yeah, catch up, reminisce on old times. Yes, that was nice. And then other than that, obviously the big news of this week from Nintendo, we have the new hardware at long last, which is an alarm clock called Alarmo. So now you can wake up to Mario collecting some coins, and as you roll about in bed wishing the noise would stop, he'll collect them that much faster, and he won't stop until you emerge from your bed to the victory level clear music. And what better way to start your day than
The one that made me laugh the most. I honestly thought it was April Fool. I checked the date because I'm sure it's like October. There's the Splatoon theme you can get, and I was just like, right, so you're gonna wake up to the sound of gunfire in the morning. I mean, I might not choose that mode.
it would wake you up.
It would get me out of bed. That's for sure. Yeah, that was a weird one. It feels like something that I probably need to get me out of bed in the mornings, but also something I would absolutely 100% hate.
Yeah, it does actually seem like a novel idea that because it's like watching you, which is a bit questionable. But it won't stop until you get out of bed. Whereas obviously, like your phone alarm, you could run the risk of just like, yeah, I'm up, turn it off, and then head back down on the pillow and you're away again. Whereas this, this won't let you stop. You can't stop it until you're up and out of bed, and you're probably less likely to fall back asleep by that point. Anyway, so yeah, the Switch successor, hopefully not, but
it's finally here. Thanks, Aaron. As for myself, I've basically just been playing StarCraft as always. I am now up to Platinum League, on my way to becoming an esports player. So for context, Platinum is like, I'm pretty sure bronze to gold is like, you're just pretty rubbish at this game. Platinum is like, oh, you might be okay, and then it goes from there.
I didn't know what it meant, so when you mentioned it like earlier today, I googled it and I was like, what does it mean? And it was like, it means that you're a somewhat respectable player.
Was that? Oh, is it? Was that the
That's
actual
what it said.
definition?
That's what it said.
Yeah, that's how I go through life. Somewhat respectable. That's my ambitions. All right, enough of that. Let's get into things. So, a few shout outs quickly. We obviously just did Pocket Gamer Connects Helsinki. So, thank you everyone that attended for that, and to all the speakers, all the sponsors. We just released the top 50. If you haven't seen that, link in the comments. And you can check that out on the website. Who made it? Top 50 mobile game makers. Upcoming events, we've got Pocket Gamer Connects Jordan on November 9th and 10th. And we've got Pocket Gamer Connects London, our biggest show of the year, which takes place on January 20th to 21st. So looking forward to seeing you at those shows. There's like an event every week at the moment, so I'm sure I'll see someone at one of those. So on to the big news of the week. So there's plenty to get through. Some we've left for the week of views towards the end. To start with, I thought we'd kick off with Monopoly Go maker Scopely is gearing up for a mega deal acquisition next year. So I presumably they really mean, well, I guess backed by Savvy Games Group, which bought Scopely for $4.9 billion. So according to MobileGamer.biz, the company's chief revenue officer, Tim O'Brien, shared the plans during a subscriber-only Q&A at Variety's Entertainment and Technology Summit. He said, I hope that we announce at least one mega deal. And when I say mega deal, I mean a scaled global franchise doing hopefully at least $1 billion in revenue. So who could that be? I guess speculation. We just did the top 50, so I'm wondering. I'm kind of immediately ruling out Chinese developers. So, because I guess I don't really know how that would work. Maybe I'm just wrong. That sounds like it would be a difficult thing to do. So I guess who else does Playrix could buy? Hostgates, Gardenscapes. Again, some of these will probably end up being more than Scopely cost, which would be weird. But I guess they'd be a great company to get. Moon Active, maybe. I guess because Monopoly Go's kind of. If you want to corner that market with Coin Master Plus, Moon Active's doing really well in other genres like Merge now. What the companies have got? Magmatic Games and Melsoft are doing really well. So actually, you would get, I guess, a diverse portfolio from Require Moon Active, plus your biggest rival for Monopoly Go. And Playtika, I thought, maybe. These are all probably ridiculous, but I like the biggest companies that are making over, for one franchise, $1 billion. There's not that many. So I guess they look. I guess Playtika was looking to sell. They're looking a bit more attractive with the Superplay acquisition. So maybe, but then Superplay itself costs $2 billion. So the more I think about it, the more that's probably ridiculous. I don't know, Paige, Aaron, any wild speculation on who could that be?
I don't know about wild speculation, but I think out of the ones you have said, if I had to bank on one, I'd probably go Moon Active. Like that's the one that would maybe make the most sense.
Yeah, I think they're definitely a good one. I have no idea how much like a Moon Active would cost. I mean, Coin Master is insane, and their other games are doing very, very well. So, but these would definitely be mega deals, almost like a merger rather than just an acquisition.
Yeah, because I guess that's the wording of it. Like there are plenty it could be, but a mega deal that kind of shortens the list, I guess.
I actually forgot. I'm looking at the top 50 now. I forgot like a really obvious one Dream Games, that actually probably makes the most sense. Royal Match, it's a massive game. They're about to release Royal Kingdom in November. I saw, so they'll have a second game, and they were talking about $1 billion franchise. It's overtaking Candy Crush. That's probably a good shout, actually. I think actually I'm gonna go with Dream Games. Why not?
Yeah.
We'll see how wrong I am later next year. So yeah, that was an interesting one. And then some other, I guess, quick funding stories. OpenAI gets a $4 billion credit line, and that was just days after it secured $6.6 billion in a funding round. Obviously, OpenAI does ChatGPT, and they're kind of leading, quote unquote, the generative AI charge. When I say quote unquote, because obviously you've got different kind of company, but Nvidia leading that charge as well. And then some other quick stories. Finnish developer Future Run secured a round of investment led by Supercell. Rivers has raised €4 million to fuel its user-generated content creations. And then some other little stories. Konami has signed a FIFA deal for FIFA E World Cups featuring eFootball, which I guess you could kind of knew this kind of thing was going to come, that another developer would take the FIFA license. For some reason, I kind of thought it would be Take-Two, because they're rumoured to be working on a football game. I guess technically it still could be them. I miss the days of Pro Evo. To be honest, it used to be very good, a very good rival to FIFA. Very much slipped away, and then it changed to eFootball. And FIFA E, it sounds like it just sounds wrong. It sounds like some budget game or some blockchain game.
I was going to say, like a cryptocurrency.
Yeah,
some real money
it
game.
does sound blockchainy. Yeah,
it doesn't sound. I'm sure there'll be many good blockchain games that come out, but this it just sounds awful. Called it FIFA E World Cup. I don't think anyone, like, if it was just called FIFA World Cup, I think people would buy it or play it if it's going to be free. FIFA E. And then lastly on my list, Turkey blocks Discord in latest social platform ban. So as reported by Reuters, the ban comes from Turkey's Information Technologies and Communications Authority. Apparently that it was due to suspicion of child sex abuse and obscenity. And that was according to the Justice Minister, Yilmaz Tunç. They've also banned previously Roblox, I think under basically some similar reasons. They had other reasons as well. And all this in the context of, I think they also moved to block Instagram previously. So there's just a big crackdown, I guess, on these kind of communication platforms. I guess you could speculate as to why, whether those reasons are the ones. And, you know, these platforms do have a responsibility to regulate the content on there. And maybe it's just not good enough if you let some through, right? You have to kind of block it all. But, you know, you can speculate if there's other wider, maybe political reasons as well. So that's it. That's it for my news roundup. For anyone that's like watching this and thinking you're going to talk about Google and Epic, that's coming up later. But for now, Paige, what have you got?
Yeah, from me, I'm going to start with, you were just mentioning Roblox as well, some Roblox news, which is actually really big at the moment. So basically, there was this Hindenburg research report, and they have accused Roblox of inflating their metrics, particularly how many players there are and their engagement hours. They kind of go on to accuse them that this is obviously misleading investors, it's misleading their regulators, advertisers, and kind of just lying how many people are using the platform. They have said that they're overestimating the numbers by anything from 25 to 42%. So, you know, pretty significant. But a lot of this comes down to the fact that, like, what they're essentially saying is, you know, Roblox are measuring people's numbers, but that could be, you know, if that's 5 accounts, really that could just be one person on 5 different accounts. Obviously, a lot of people have alts and things like that. They also raised the issue of bot accounts. So apparently there are bots just sitting in Roblox for 24 hours straight, which obviously drives the hours up. Again, just having an impact on what engagement data that they've got. And then in addition, to that, which is already pretty terrible, the issues of child safety's popped up again, which is something we get a lot with Roblox. But they kind of went as far to call it an X-rated paedophile hellscape, which is, that's pretty extreme. Obviously, Roblox they did come back with a statement, kind of on both parts. The statement that addressed to me, which is, obviously numbers and figures are pretty important, but also like the child safety stuff, which is the majority of their platform. They were just like, yeah, there's lots of good experiences on Roblox, so I feel like there's got to be a lot more addressed on that. But then in terms of the the financial side of things and the inflated numbers, they did make a statement, and they said that the report was very misleading, and the authors, they're short sellers with their own sort of agenda. I was looking around online to see what just people's opinions are, and it's quite split. There's a lot of debate. Some people are kind of being like, this report has done this intentionally. They're known for doing stuff like this. It's a quick way for them to get some cash, and they're doing it for their own gain. But then there is the argument of, well, there's no smoke without fire, and this could definitely be something that is going on. Like I said, it's definitely not the first time that Roblox has popped up with these kind of conversations, particularly around, child safety. So yeah, very, very big claims.
Yeah, because I know a few months ago there was another, attack, you could say, on Roblox on the kind of child safety points, and I know then they similarly said, well, for most people, Roblox is a great time, and it was a very small percentage of people that have had problems, but obviously it's still important to address them, particularly on a platform of that scale, even if it's a low percentage. It's still a lot of people.
Yeah, they have a responsibility to look after the people that are on that platform, which, like I said, the majority of people on that platform are children. So, like, to me, that's the bit that's more outrageous. Obviously, the numbers thing is bad, but it is just like, if there are kids on this platform, you do need to keep them safe. But I guess it is that awful thing of, their business is about getting more numbers and more players. And the more people you get, they're seeing it as, well, we can't protect everyone, people behave in a certain way, but to me it is their responsibility. Like, they do need to make sure that this platform is safe for children to be on. Like some of the research of them going on there and finding games that are like, schoolgirl on toilet, like, why is that on your game? That's not okay. So yeah, as for the whole report, who knows, maybe they've done some of this for their own gains. I'm sure maybe they have, but yeah, I just think their statement, they do need to come out with something a little bit more tangible, pushing on how they're trying to keep people safe, and yeah, just making sure that the platform, well, doesn't become a place where kids literally aren't safe to be.
To me, of them, or that one of the most fascinating things to me is the nature of Hindenburg research. Like, I'm kind of surprised it's legal. I mean, I guess if you looked at the constituent parts, I guess I don't know, maybe they don't sound illegal. Obviously, as always, I'm not a lawyer. So you take a short selling position, and then you've been doing all of this research, and you just release all of that, expecting the price to tank. So if you look at Hindenburg research, they've done this loads of times, and one of the ones that they did was a company called, forgive me the pronunciation, ECAN Enterprises or ICAN Enterprises, and basically they did their report. They took a short position, and then the share price tanked by 50%. And if I look now, it has never recovered.
Wow. And
then you look at Roblox shares. And so I'll just make an assumption. So if this report released on the 8th of October, so Roblox shares closed on the 7th cents. At the start of the day on October 8th, it was $37.64. A few dollars drop, and then it just kind of bounced straight back up suddenly. There's been basically no impact of this report that Hindenburg would have wanted. It's kind of the kind of gross thing about it from Hindenburg's point of view is it's like, you're doing this research and maybe some of this would actually be really good, but they're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. They're doing it to make money. So,
yeah.
you're exposing these things just to make lists. I don't know. There's something sounds wrong about that as well. So it's a very strange story.
Yeah, it's kind of like they're pointing out how someone might potentially be exploiting something, and in return, they are
Right.
exploiting the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Next up from me, I think we mentioned Humble Games last week on the podcast, but I think it was just to do with their layoffs. But now there's some more news coming out of them. So Humble Games has partnered with startup games publisher Good Games, which basically includes ex Humble Games staff. So obviously they had layoffs not too long ago. It was kind of a bit of a messy ordeal. Was there layoffs? Was it a shutdown? It was all a little bit confusing. But this new partnership means that Good Games can basically now support Humble Games. A lot of the issue, I think, came from the fact that when they had this separation, a lot of the indie developers that had been working with them before, all of a sudden, after the layoffs, they were struggling to do like updates to games that had already released. So I'm assuming by having Good Games come on board to support, these are people that already have knowledge of these games, have already worked with these developers, and they are going to be able to help them, through this kind of process. Yeah, and that's just where they come in. So it's sort of a strange situation where it's like there's been these layoffs, and then people have gone out, made their own studio with people in that studio that were previously laid off, and now they're kind of teaming up. So it's a weird one, but I suppose in the grand scheme of things, it's a good thing. If you've gone through a layoff and you go into a new company, and then you get to work on something you previously were anyway. So yeah, kind of it. I think it just adds to the whole confusion of the Humble Games thing. But no, good that these developers will actually be able to get what they need and hopefully be able to do those updates, because yeah, kind of weird that since that's happened, they've just not been able to do anything with their games that are already released.
I know that they. Well, I know that. I was just looking it up. The Humble Games did previously work, or would it have been Humble Games? Humble Bundle. I don't know. They previously worked with the Powell Group to help some of those studios and games that were kind of, I guess, left in the lurch a bit from Humble Games. So I guess, I don't know, Good Games works with Power Group now, or Good Games just takes all that work. But yeah, like you say, it is good news.
One final bit from me. It's not newsy. It's more on the features side of things, but it is one that I wanted to just highlight a little bit. So this is from Oksana Fomina. We've had her on the site quite a few times. At this point, she's founder of Gradient Universe, and she usually does a lot of analysis or deep dives on like titles, live ops, and things like that. So this time around, she had a look at Super Play's dive streams, which is nice and timely with obviously all the news we've had about them and the Playtika acquisition, and obviously being in our top 50, which is way more important. But yeah, it's a really insightful read, and she dives into a bunch of different aspects on their live ops strategy. She gives kind of like 5 lessons to take on board from it. Obviously, I won't go into all 5 of them in depth here, but just a little bit on those. So she kind of highlights that obviously they do lots of different events, but they have sort of a focus on short events, so between 1 to maybe 3 days. Something like that creates like a sense of urgency, boosts daily active users. She brought up a good point about like their events having rewards. So rather than it just being a reward that when that event is over, it's done with, sometimes those rewards can be used in later events. So if you kind of stack a load up and then the event ends and then a new one starts and you think, oh, I've still got stuff left from that reward, it's sort of a way to entice people back in. So just, clever little mechanics, clever little features that have obviously paid off for them. She goes into their in-app purchases, there being lots of variety in the purchases. There's seasonal passes, there's exclusive offers. So again, it's just sort of about, don't just offer players one thing, because what might make me spend might not make you spend. So yeah, she goes into a lot more detail on those things. But yeah, just in general, I think the dive streams, it makes a really interesting case study. It's been out for quite a few years now, and somehow in 2024, a year where a lot of games have actually struggled, they're kind of having their best year yet. So yeah, I think it's just it's kind of a perfect game to do a case study of right now, and I've only gone over it very briefly, so if that is something you're interested in, do go and read the full thing because it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a great article, and Oksana's, yeah, like I said, done a few of those. I think she did a deep dive into Brawl Stars, which I guess similar
Yeah.
ish kind of experience. So yeah, definitely check those out. Thanks very much for that, Paige. Aaron, what have you got?
Yeah, so first up from me, Square Enix have announced another new mobile game. This one's called Ember Storia. Currently, it's looking like it's only coming out in Japan. And yeah, it's just quite an interesting one because mobile generally seems to be a market that Square's been having some trouble with in recent years. Quite a lot of closures of various games. Particularly last year, it seemed like I was covering something every couple of weeks that was closing, like from like Sino Alice, Bravely Default, Echoes of Mana, loads of different franchises. And then even like Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, given the kind of size and popularity of the IP, it hasn't done incredibly well. But yeah, they've got a new mobile game on the way, regardless. In particular, I'm quite excited to see the character designs personally because they've got Yusuke Kozaki as the main character designer. I quite like his style. He's done quite a lot for Nintendo, like Fire Emblem Awakening and Fates Heroes, which is on mobile. He's done some Xenoblade Chronicles, Pokemon designs, designed Toxtricity, which is quite a popular newer Pokemon. But no, it's interesting that Square's got another mobile game on the way, and for now it's going to be Japan only. It fits a kind of theme from them, but goes a bit against things they've said before. I think that's something I'll be going more into in future weeks.
Yeah, we could tease that a bit. We looked at this, and then Aaron made a good point that it's like, well, Square Enix has this strategy that is all about kind of going global, and then on mobile, they've shut down a bunch of games, and then now they announce a game that is, I think, only launching currently in Japan. Yeah, Square Enix's revenue is going down. Japanese market is actually declined quite a lot. So I mean, I guess it only takes one hit for them to go, well, it was a good game, so we released it and it did really well. So you can talk about all these trends, and maybe it won't matter if they would just release a good game. But things haven't gone that way for quite a long time. So yeah, Aaron is looking into that. So looking forward to seeing the data and what you find from that.
Yeah, so be sure to tune in again next week, everyone. So then, yeah, next from me. So Epic Games is officially financially sound, according to CEO Tim Sweeney. So he was talking at Unreal Fest in Seattle, which sort of started on a much brighter note than last year, because it was a year ago when Epic just had it was about 800 layoff, and at the time they kind of acknowledged that they were having to cut back to kind of keep afloat really, and said there'd be a degradation in quality and not a great way to do your Unreal Fest, but necessary last year. But yeah, this year they've said they're now financially sound, and Fortnite and the Epic Games Store have both hit new records since the last Unreal Fest. So yeah, a much more positive year for them. Fortnite hit 110 million monthly active users apparently last holiday season, which was an all-time peak. And then the Epic Games Store reached its new record just last month in September. Apparently they had 70 million monthly active users, which obviously take into account mobile now as well. So whether those numbers will stay kind of stably higher than they used to be, I guess we'll see. But yeah, all around it seems kind of better news for them recently.
Sorry, I was just I just suddenly I don't know why I didn't see it before. So like they said, there was a press briefing from Tim Sweeney about their lawsuit with Samsung. Out of that came that the Epic Games Store had, I think, 10 million downloads on mobile in the EU today. If that's September, so 70 million, I wonder if they just counted like around about 10 million on mobile that just sort of installed it. Technically they're a monthly user, even if
I
they never use it
guess.
again.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, interesting point.
I'll be curious to see what those numbers are consistently in a couple of years. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I just suddenly thought like, oh yeah, 70 million, but if 10 millions of that's mobile, and I wonder how many of those are actually active on a monthly basis rather than just the 1 month.
Yeah. No, yeah, interesting point. I guess, yeah, maybe it won't be so many at the minute, because I guess if you've been on there to like download Fortnite or something, I guess there's not all that much on there right now. So, but as they add more things, because they've got like an Arc game coming later this year, and then last week we were talking about their new kind of initiatives they're kicking off in January to try and get more games on there. And maybe then it will. But yeah, you might be right. For now, their monthly total might just be that initial like download spike.
I mentioned to you guys, it just makes me laugh. This is only very closely related just because we're talking about Fortnite. Like, when you do journalist stuff, it's always super interesting what random things end up in your inbox. And I had something that was like from Domino's Pizza. And I was just like, why is Domino's like in my emails? And it's because they're doing a partnership with Fortnite. We didn't cover this story, but it's huge news, guys. Domino's and Fortnite. I think it's something like an emergency pizza. So, yeah, as much as, they're financially sound now, but they've also got a partnership with Domino's.
Does that mean Domino's is going to be in Fortnite? So...
I think there was like a picture of like a Domino's store, but within Fortnite.
They just have like the battle bus as a Domino's delivery truck delivering.
That's such a good idea. They should do that.
I take
I hope
commission.
you can order a Domino's in Fortnite now, and then it will be delivered to your house in real life. If not, then they're missing a trick there. Anyway, last one from me is Black Salt Games' horror fishing RPG Dredge is coming to iOS and Mac on December 18th this year, and hopefully on the Google Play Store as well on the same day. There's no pre-order listing on the Play Store yet, though, because according to Dredge developer Joel Mason, Google doesn't believe that they own the rights to the game, so they're not letting them list it. But they do intend to release it on the Play Store, so on Android as well, provided that gets sorted out, which you'd like to think it wouldn't take too long for that to get resolved. The game came out last year on PC and consoles and has been quite popular. It kind of blends together like fishing, but also kind of eldritch cosmic horror, which is quite a combination. And yeah, they're going to release a demo on Apple devices as well, which they haven't said they're planning to do a demo for the Play Store, but again, they do plan on releasing it fully on there, provided Google accepts that they own the game, basically.
Yeah, there's a weird one. Yeah, they showed the picture of Sea of Conquest. And they were like, Google thinks this is like theirs. Strange one. I presume it can only presume that this will be sorted out well before launch. But yeah, it's very unfortunate, isn't it? And the interesting thing, as we were discussing in the call earlier, is that this got to be a premium game. Well, I think is it free trial and then premium.
Yeah. So, like there's a demo, a free demo. Or something.
Which, like years ago, you'd say do not do this, but actually we're seeing potentially like there's actually a few premium games now coming out on mobile again. We'll talk about the Stanley Parable earlier. There were loads of other examples, and I can't remember them now.
Electro,
Resident Evil 2.
There you go. So it's actually quite interesting that developers are trying this again, and it's not just to do with like when you say Resident Evil, like there was that debate about these big AAA games like that. Can they succeed on mobile? But does anyone really want those on mobile? But I'm curious to see the business model making a comeback. Maybe whether that does anything for these developers, whether it's worth it, especially with subscription. Like for many years, it was like, oh, premium's dead, and probably a settled case. and then subscription kind of comes along with Apple Arcade and others, and I was like, well, it's definitely kind of dead now, but revived in a different way, maybe. And yeah, now it's I feel like we've gone full circle.
Generally seems to be more like the indie scene, at least from what I've observed, that's going for the premium model. I guess kind of sticking to the old fashioned, you could say, like selling a finished game rather than. So I guess you kind of know with games with like in-app purchases and frequent updates, like the game never really ends, which in some ways is great, but I guess there is a market that just wants a game that, you know, I have this game, I will finish this game eventually and then start a new game. I guess maybe they're
I think, like, personally for mobile, I think it just depends on the type of game. So, like Dredge, for example, I brought Dredge and I haven't played it, but I brought it and I got it for I got it on Steam, but I specifically got it to play it on my Steam Deck because I was like, I don't really want to play it on my console. Kind of want it to be like a kind of portable game because it just feels like something that would feel good to play in that way. I still haven't got around to playing it, and maybe I should have just waited because it actually is something I would play on mobile. Whereas like Resident Evil, I would just play that on my console. To be honest, I wouldn't play Resident Evil 2 on my phone, but I would play Dredge on my phone. So maybe it just depends on the type of game as well and the type of player.
Yeah, we're not talking about like with indie, you know, these games don't have to make, you know, millions of dollars for us to say, oh, it's a huge success. Like if it makes, firstly, if it makes its money back, and then more on top of that, then that's kind of fantastic. But yeah, it just the kind of old thinking is that it doesn't work. It's not worth it. You'll spend loads of money doing it, and you won't really get much return for that. Yeah, curious to see how all these games are going to do. So read PocketGamer.biz, and we'll let you know. So we're going to move on now to the Week in View section. So one of the big stories recently is kind of the Epic v Google case, and the judge ruled in favor of Epic and said, you know, Google has monopoly, and now the judge has ruled that a few things that Google has to do, but Google is appealing. So we'll have, I think these are supposed to go through by November, but Google has 8 months to actually implement these changes that I'll say in a sec, plus the appeal. So who knows when any of this is actually going to happen, or even if. But so basically, Google now has to. This is in the US only. Basically, Google now has to open up to third-party stores within Google Play. So you don't even just have to sideload. It needs to share all apps in its catalog with other stores. And I think developers opt in or opt out of that, rather, if they don't want that. Developers can also set their own prices regardless of Google Play Store billing, and Google can no longer enforce its payment system on the Play Store. Google can't incentivize developers with money or perks to launch exclusively or even first on the Play Store. And the ruling will also factor in new devices, so stopping Google from paying device manufacturers and carriers from pre-installing the Play Store and not third-party stores. All of these will be enforced for 3 years, which is half of Epic's request. The judge said this should provide sufficient time for rivals to grow and, quote, level the playing field. Yeah, so breaking this down a bit, on payment options and fees, I wonder if Google just does an Apple, creates like a runtime fee or, quote, core technology fee, and just starts charging maybe for installs, or just starts charging a platform fee that basically makes Google whole for their 30% fee, or maybe even gets them more money. I very much doubt, even if they have to implement these, that Google will willingly try and just say, yeah, that's all fine, and not do anything about it. Like, I think, as we've seen from Apple, I think actually as we've seen from Google elsewhere in the world, you know, they'll just say, okay, well, you can have your alternate payment, but we'll charge, I think, what was it they charged before? Like, we'll charge 27%, and then you can have your third party billing. So that makes the whole third party billing doesn't work in that sense. So I wonder if that's what happens. At the incentives bit, and I think this was actually kind of the crux of the case, if I remember right. There's been so many legal cases, so apologies if I get them mixed up. I think part of it was that when they said they had a monopoly, it was because Google was doing these kind of deals with companies to basically secure its quote unquote monopoly. And that's why this case kind of ended differently from the Apple case. So I think Google was even said well, Apple doesn't have to deal with this. It's the same thing. Why is it just us? But I think that is why. I'm curious. Couple things. What no incentives means for Play Pass. Can that still exist as its own separate thing within Google Play? So can they pay developers to be on that subscription service? I don't know. People probably thinking, what's Play Pass? I forgot all about it. But yeah, I believe it still does exist. And then, Aaron, you mentioned in the article that Epic itself is planning special perks for users. So for the Epic Game Store, so they could do it Google Card, which I guess makes sense, right?
Interesting.
Actually, to be fair, it'd just be interesting to see if Epic, Xbox, and other stores that have popped up can create a space for themselves. So overall, I guess the impact of it, I think it's not nothing. This is great news again for companies like Epic. Again, we don't know how Google's going to implement the changes, and like I said, Google's going to appeal. And I think I did see an article on Games Industry where, and they're not wrong, but people kind of questioning, where it's Google Play, most of the money is spent on the App Store. So I looked at the data, and I think we shouldn't play down actually how significant Google Play revenue is for games in the US. So according to App Magic, first 9 months of this year, Google Play still accounts for 40% of mobile games revenue in the US, which is a substantial amount of money. That is billions of dollars. I haven't got it written down here. As a total guess, I think it was $5.3 billion for the first 9 months of the year from games. It's an incredible amount of money. So that, and then Google takes its big kind of 30% cut on that. Yeah, if developers can get away from the 30% fee, if they can go to another store and just that is a lot of money that they can get back. Sure, they might have most of their money coming from the App Store, but a not insignificant amount comes elsewhere. But I said before, ultimately, I think this is kind of, say all this goes through, it is good news, but it's incredibly difficult to shift player habits away from Google Play. We'll see if Epic and Xbox, well, Epic sounds like they obviously are going to stick around after all of this, and how much they can invest in it and just kind of carve out some kind of share. But I'd be interesting also to see what happens after 3 years, if Google can just return everything to the way it was and just make it incredibly difficult again. I guess we'll see how that all pans out. That was a big story of the week. And then also, I nearly forgot to say, as part of its antitrust case, the US is mulling to to break up Google into different constituent parts. So that would be something. I think that was more to do with the search monopoly, but I think it was also to do with Android as well. So Google's fighting a lot of fires at the moment in the US, and then, as we know, kind of around the world. This stuff's going to rubble on for years, but clearly there are cracks. There are many cracks appearing in these mobile app stores ecosystems, and we'll see what kind of revenue share developers get when eventually, decades to come, the dust settles.
It's the 3-year bit that gets me. So are they essentially saying that, let's just see what can happen for 3 years. This is enough time for all of you other guys to catch up with Google, and then after you're all on a level playing field, realistically, I don't really see that happening. 3 years maybe sounds a while, but like I said, people are set in certain ways and do things in certain ways. So I don't know if 3 years is really enough to be able to, catch up to that kind of level where they're now not a monopoly. So yeah, I think that's the thing. After 3 years, what then? Do they extend this, or is it oh well, there you go, you can go back to doing what you want now? The 3 years have passed. So yeah, that's the bit that just catches me.
So I think some parts of it feel really quite thorough to keep Google from kind of finding loopholes in the system for these 3 years. When I was reading through it all, it's the fact that it's well, okay, so we want to kind of stop Google having this monopoly. We need to make it so other people can have their app stores on there. And then it's like, okay, so that means we need to kind of ban Google from paying people off to not ship things with other platforms. And we also need to ban them from paying to definitely stick with the Play Store. In some ways, it's really quite well thought out, I think. But then, yeah, as you say, like the 3 years, it's like, well, even if someone, whether it's Epic or someone else, does start to kind of encroach on the market there, if Google can then just go back to being like, well, we're not going to distribute your app stores anymore through Google Play, then no one new can kind of get in on the other app stores after the 3 years. And if they're also then allowed to kind of pay manufacturers not to put other app stores on there, when it comes time for people to upgrade their phones, even if they were using like the Epic Games Store, if their new phone comes and it's just the Play Store again, and then you can't download Epic Games on there anymore, like it'd kind of just go back to how it was.
Yeah, I think there will be certain things that Google still wouldn't be able to do because obviously they got in a lot of trouble for these kind of deals that they made, right?
Yeah.
So if they did them in a similar way again, they would just get into the same
thing
problem, and probably you would assume the consequences would be far worse. And I guess at some point, Google does have to be put back on a quote unquote level playing field. Like they can't in perpetuity not be able to offer kind of special deals whilst their rivals can. But yeah, 3 years that's not long. That is a sizable investment that rivals have to make in a short amount of time to carve out some sort of space for a future that I guess would still look a bit uncertain. Interesting. So that's the big Google news of the week. Paige, you've got another company that's been in the news quite a lot in recent months.
Yeah, I was going to say, like every podcast, we mention Ubisoft, and we're here again. Obviously, I think I say this every week about Ubisoft. Once top of their game, and lately, recent years just haven't been as great for Ubisoft by their own admission. Some of their games have fallen lower than expected with Star Wars Outlaws. They've obviously pushed back Assassin's Creed Shadows, which basically that happened, and then instantly shares plummeted. They went really low, and then at the end of last week, all of a sudden there was this report that Tencent and Ubisoft's founding family, I think I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but it's French. So is it Guillemot? Is that how it's pronounced?
Guillemot.
Yeah. So those guys, so they're considering a potential buyout. Bear in mind, this is just speculation at the moment, nothing concrete, but just from the report itself, the shares they spiked again. I think they went up the biggest single day jump on record, which is great and it sounds impressive, but at the same time, things haven't been good for years. So just reading that, sure, it sounds great, but there's still quite a long way to go. Ubisoft responded to all of these claims, but it's very classic PR manner of, yeah, we're aware that people are talking about this, and we'll keep everyone informed if something does happen. So I don't think we were expecting Ubisoft to come out and say anything sort of stronger than that. That was to be expected. But yeah, I suppose the real question is how much of this is just talk and speculation, and it's an idea of something that could happen, and how much of it is actually no, like this is seriously something that is heavily considered and may happen. And if it does happen, like what does that mean? It gives Ubisoft, if it does happen, maybe it gives them some short-term relief from the recent years' stress and things not going out how they want them to go out. But at the end of the day, I kind of see it as if they're private, if they're public, it kind of doesn't really matter if how they approach their games just still seems completely out of tune with their players. I think it was only recently that their CEO said something along the lines of like, in today's market, it's difficult because gamers essentially want too much. Like that's kind of a terrible statement to give. So you've made games that haven't hit the mark, and it's the player's fault because we all want too much. So yeah, for me, like I think if it did happen, it could be a good thing, but I still just have those worries of ultimately, if it's Ubisoft private, if it's Ubisoft public, there still needs to be some fundamental changes in their mentality towards how they're making games. They're kind of saying like, oh, we release these quality games and they're not hitting the mark. I don't know. I think that's kind of debatable with a lot of their games in recent years. I wouldn't say the quality is always there. Maybe it is after it's released and it's been out for a year, but yeah, big news. And then I think it was only today that we were talking about Ubisoft are also being sued. So, it's just kind of never ending for them, really.
Yeah, that was the class action lawsuit over allegedly sharing data with Meta. I think
Yeah, that was it. So they can't get a break at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. Do you guys think is this going to happen? Are they going to be bought out, or is it more talk than it is actually action?
What gets me is that the Guillemets are so, again, it's their company, but they're so want to keep it as theirs, or he wants to keep it as he wants to be in charge all the time, that the decisions that are being made appear, but like if I was to look at it from the outside, it's like, well, okay, so when Tencent first came in, you did that to stave off an acquisition because you wanted to keep control. The rumor about Tencent and Guillemot considering to take it private, and then they released a statement of, like you said, just a small statement about it. Is that just to keep control again? Like, none of this is actually to. It doesn't appear like any of this is to improve the company. It just is.
Yeah.
It's just like to solidify their position within it. And there's obviously things that are going wrong. I mean, I guess private or public, yeah, like you said, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
in a
because that's kind of
sense.
what I was thinking about. I was thinking like this is like it's really big news if it happens. If it doesn't happen, it's big news. But does anything actually really change you either way? I'm not really sure because
Yeah,
there's
I
still
guess.
something just at the core kind of wrong.
I guess because we're just talking about the developers. I guess if you're an investor, if someone buys it, you'll make money and leave, but you probably lose a lot. When you said like, yeah, shares rose like their sharpest ever, 36%. I took a look. It's still at a 10-year low. That's how far it fell.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, come. When's I've forgotten the release date of Shadows now. Is it January?
I think so.
I think it's first quarter next year. I can't remember.
January,
Yeah,
February.
it's definitely early because it was supposed to be the end of this year, so it'll only be a couple of months.
If that does really well, we might all start saying, "Oh, Ubisoft's on a turnaround." But is one game enough for a big publisher like Ubisoft? On it, it will need another big hit, I think, for people to be like, "Oh, it's doing really well again." My take. It seems more like a fight for control than a fight for let's get things in order. Thanks for that, Paige. So, Aaron, what have you got?
Yeah, so my last one today is about Wuthering Waves, which has coasted to 150 million gross mobile revenue by AppMagic estimates. So this is Kuro Games' open world RPG, and yes, it's made it to 150 million in just over 4 months since it came out, which is an impressive milestone to get in that time. By comparison, obviously we were talking about Hoyoverse earlier. I think it was only last week I was talking about Zenless Zone Zero hit 150 million in 3 months. So for Kuro Games' new RPG to hit that milestone, only take a couple more weeks to get there. I think that's quite an impressive accomplishment. Obviously, the game was quite big sort of earlier in the summer, but its revenue has been declining quite considerably month on month since. So it peaked in June, and it's that was around 60 million in June on mobile, but then that halved to about 30 million in July, and then again to like 16 million in August. So it's definitely had quite a stark decline over the past few months, but nevertheless, with kind of the momentum it had at launch and quickly getting to 100 million, it's now hit 150. And yeah, you'd imagine Kuro Games must have something in the works to kind of turn it back around. because of how kind of steep the declines are. They did have a pretty reasonable spike with the version 1.3 update in late September, which introduced like a new limited time character to the gacha, so players only have like a limited time to get them, and the base pull rate is less than 1%, I think. So I guess you need to spend quite a lot of resources to get the character. And yeah, so the game's revenue spiked by 292% on the launch day of the version update, which is quite a considerable spike. Yeah, it does seem like they need to do something to bring its revenue back on force and kind of break this monthly decline that's going on. Yeah, whether there's more to come in this version update that will do that, or whether they need to do something a bit more dramatic, I guess you could say. Yeah, I think the fact that they, after their beta, they kind of reworked the game quite a lot and overhauled a lot of elements and rewrote the narrative, which obviously paid off because, again, it has made a lot of money in a short amount of time. But that kind of suggests maybe they can do that again and move it in another positive direction now in whatever way that needs to be.
I think Wuthering Waves, just in general, has been a huge success for Kuru Games, especially like in the light of the changes that you mentioned that they made as well. I played it. It really is. It really is a good game. Like the combat is I really enjoyed that. So I think they made. I literally just had it in front of me, but 7-8 million net revenue according to Outmagic, 7.5 million net revenue in September, just from the App Store and Google Play. So not including other platforms and presumably third-party Android stores in China. So they're still making a lot of money. I think it's important for us to say that it is in quite a steep decline, at least on App Store and Google Play, which would be, I guess, of course, a concern. But we're definitely saying it's still a very successful game.
This is good news overall.
It's good news that they've lost. It's good news that they made 150 mil. It's very good in gross. The surge that you said that is still kind of going, and actually, so October you're at 4.8 million net revenue, and September it was 7.5. So you're looking, we're less than a third way through the month, so they're looking pretty good for October to go back to kind of growth again. So it looks, well, assuming, like you say, that I guess the changes that they made kind of sustain from that point of view. Yeah, I really like Wuthering Waves, and see, good luck to them. So that brings us to the end of the week in mobile games. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. Thank you very much to Paige for taking part.
Yeah, thank you for everyone for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, good to be here.
And yeah, thanks again for everyone. I hope you have a great weekend. We'll catch you on next week's show. Have a good one. Goodbye.